We're back with more boss rankings. Look at that! We're going through all of the Soulsborne, Sekiro, and Elden Ring bosses. All the cool people are checking out the previous episodes in the linked playlist. Don't be a pinwheel. Watch the series. Now, let's begin with number 91, Vendrick. Vendrick is one of those bosses that makes it as hard as possible to quantify him in a ranking. It's like trying to measure the amount of stupid in the air. I just don't have the tools. How do I value the mechanics of this fight versus the lore and satisfying reveal with the music? It was definitely a shocking moment to find him here for the first time. Most players probably expect a grander ruler of destiny, or perhaps a Gwyn-like figure. He definitely is not mechanically intricate. He has like 2 or 3 attacks, and his fight is kind of a slog. But I still kind of enjoy fighting him despite how simplistic it is. I know some people would consider putting him near the bottom of the list, but I love my Zombie King. He's not a great boss, but he's a great part of the world and story of Dark Souls 2, and for that, he moved up quite a bit. Number 90, the Four Kings. Huge props for the badass drop into the abyss that set the stage for this epic battle. The Four Kings look like some creepy amalgamation of elven kings and demons of the dark. Their animations are lively and fluid, revoking the robotic motions from earlier in the game, but you can kind of just face tank them. For some reason, I never really found myself getting punished for just running up to them and spamming them. I also always save New Londo Ruins for last, so I can have the rest of the game to prepare myself for the ghostly assaults. If you ever wondered what it feels like to be touched by hundreds of ghosts at the same time, well, you'll love New Londo Ruins because you'll get to feel that. Through the walls, through the ceilings, through the floors, nowhere is safe. The area is so hard, I have to leave it for last, and the boss is just so easy at this stage in the game with full tanking. For setting up an impeccable atmosphere, having sick visual design and fluidity, I think it more than compensates for the other shortcomings. Number 89, Seaman of Dong. So there you are, a wistful traveler gallivanting amongst the cobalt-tinted caves. You hear melodic whispers prancing along the water of the underworld, directly into your eardrums. Inquisitive as to the origin of the alluring soundscape, you traverse cave after cave until you stumble upon this demonic frog skull. This is one of the most inventive, disturbing designs I've ever seen, and the fight isn't even that bad mechanically. The gimmick here is that you can only attack the monster when he comes out of his shell, meaning you have to get up close and personal with this visual atrocity. He unloads massive damage, but his windups are long and predictable, making this an easier fight, but an intriguing set piece. I love the whole level is building up for something beautiful to be revealed, for then it to just be so disgusting and revolting. Thank you, B-Team, you popped off on this one. Number 88, Vort of the Boreal Valley. We're currently in like the 7 out of 10 range with bosses at this level, which is 88th out of the 162 I decided to rank. So we're almost halfway, but with bosses that are much better than a 5 out of 10. It's a testament to the quality of the series. Vort is a very typical boss, but everything he does fairly well. He's got a pretty awesome soundtrack, his design is alright, he has a frost status effect which is unique, he has his own cutscene, and you can stick to his booty for victory. Phase 2 introduces some fun back and forth rolling with Vort and leaves a huge opening for punishment if completed successfully. It's like he's a bull and we're holding the flag, except we are the flag. It's a very average Souls boss, very inoffensive, but pretty damn enjoyable. Good boy, Vort. Number 87, Elemer of the Briar. Tarnished. I am your father! I never saw the Souls Star Wars crossover coming, but I guess with the Jedi Fallen Order game allegedly being kind of like Sekiro, it was bound to happen eventually. This guy legit force projects his glowing red sword at you, which puts a sick twist on the knight in armor combat. If you watch closely, his animations are extremely satisfying as well. My only complaint of this fight is that as far as I can tell, it's really only a one-phase mini-boss essentially, but the combat is still more deep and intensive than anything Dark Souls 2 or 1's base game has. Even though the arena is super limited in size, I think it sets a cool vibe, as it's not similar to many in the series. It also forces you to be up close and personal, and anytime you try to run, he ass blasts you with the power of the Force. I like it. Number 86, Mergo's Wet Nurse. Talk about a weird experience. This thing looks so sick, and I love the haunting music box as you dance with the invisible being, only visible due to the malevolent cape it wears outlining its many arms and blades. Shut up, phone. The mechanics of the fight are really the only place this fight isn't stellar. It looks amazing, feels amazing, sounds amazing, and plays okay. I just wish that she didn't spam where I used to be 5 seconds ago, which would make the fight a lot more engaging. And I wish the awesome ghost clone attack segment didn't last so long. Other than that, neato. No, not Neato the boss, like Neat-O. Although they kind of do have similar vibes. Neato. Number 85, Old Demon King. I think this boss is actually criminally underrated, probably by myself too. If I were to make a list of the top 10 underrated bosses, I'd definitely put Old Demon King on the list, and a few others that I'm not gonna spoil. He's obviously a callback to the Asylum Demon / Demon Fire Sage / Stray Demon, but he doesn't have a laughably big chungus ass or ridiculously slow and simplistic combat. His fire spells look awesome, it's satisfying to dodge almost every one of his attacks, and he revisits the trope of bosses floundering near death, which I love. With dead demons strewn across the arena, I suppose it's implied that he's one of the last of his kind. For us to kill him would end the entire species, which is tragic, and all this is told through the arena's visual storytelling. Again, it's a super fun and interesting boss, definitely underrated. Number 84, Dark Beast Parl. I think Miyazaki solo designed this boss. It's unfortunate it turned into a DPS test where if you don't have enough damage, it's practically impossible, and if you have enough, it's a cakewalk. Maybe there's a perfect sweet spot that you can be in that I haven't quite found yet. The main reason this boss is all the way up here is that it might literally be the coolest looking boss in the entire series to me. The lightning looks amazing, I love how the creature moves, and at times the combat can feel fluid and perfect. That's all done if you stagger it. And then stagger it, and then stagger it, and then Okay, I think you get the point. Number 83, Iron Golem. There are certain encounters that just permanently stake their claim in my limited brain space. It doesn't always matter if the fight is perfect or not, the iconic status alone make it something I'll never forget. You spend a long time battling through Blighttown, Sen's Fortress, and other oppressive and dark enclosed areas. To finally escape Sen's Fortress and battle a giant atop the highest tower is jaw-dropping. You step into the arena and he uses wind slashes to hack away at you as you plummet towards battle. Wait a second, this guy's like Dark Beast Parl's owner. It all makes sense now. Parl's his dog because when you hit Iron Golem's legs enough, he'll basically be permanently staggered and the fight is over instantly. It's weird, most of these bosses have a similar issue. I don't like that the Golem ends up wobbling like a drunken toddler for 30 seconds straight. It breaks the pace of the combat and makes the fight too easy. I do love that you can knock him off the edge though. Number 82, the Duke's Dear Freya. Can you guys explain to me why you hate gross bosses? I just don't get it. If they're trying their best to create an immersive atmosphere, and part of that is making the boss disturbing or disgusting, isn't that awesome? I don't want every boss to fit the same niche. Like, we don't need Artorias 55. Sometimes it's great to have bosses that fill different roles, and I think that the Duke's Dear Freya does that phenomenally. First, you can attack its ass or its face. Wait, they're both faces. Where does the poop go? I demand answers. Boycott FromSoft until then. I love how you can bait out attacks from one side and run to the other. I don't mind the spiders in the arena as they're nothing like ROM spiders. My only real complaints are with the pacing of the fight and the hitboxes. It's mostly due to the slower nature of Dark Souls 2, but sometimes the fight feels like a chess match rather than an action fight. It's just slow. And sometimes my attacks randomly seem to clip onto the boss's jaw rather than the face, meaning I do no damage. And that's no fun. Oh, we're getting news from FromSoft. They released an official statement on where the poop goes. We at FromSoft take these questions very seriously. After thorough investigation, we have discovered that the poop has no reasonable exit from Freya. Wow. Just when I was about to be immersed. Number 81, Loretta, Knight of the Haligtree. So by the time you battle your way through Rivendell, the Haligtree, you've probably faced almost every single possible horseback enemy, and there aren't that many variants. There are the Tree Sentinels, the Knights Cavalry, and the Draconic Tree Sentinels, mostly as main or mini-bosses. Loretta is somewhat of a culmination of all of these ideas, also throwing dazzling magic and more fluid movement into the mix. She's definitely my favorite of the horseback enemies, and she does put up a good fight. The arena is cool, and she's satisfying to dodge and learn. I just don't think it adds enough to the horseback ideas to warrant going much higher on the list, but I still love the fight. Number 80, Moon Presence. There are some Bloodborne bosses that have similar enough mechanics to make them feel borderline redundant. From Bloodstarved Beast to Moon Presence and Dark Beast Parl, we have spamming, quick, vile beasts with relentless aggression. I would personally argue that each has a mechanical or stylistic twist strong enough to warrant their existence in each case though. With Moon Presence, there is the secrecy element, which adds a mystique around the boss. You can only face the boss if you've collected the 3 whatever things they are, forget. But in reality, the main draw is the life drain mechanic. Oh, and with the possibility of removing your ability to use flasks. When the boss uses a move that shocks your character to 1 HP, it sends every first-time hunter into a frenzy of panic, spamming blood vials and running around aimlessly. With experience comes the knowledge that this is actually a huge opportunity for punishment, as the beast uses its entire load and has to wait a long-ass time to recover. On top of that unique mechanic, there's enough fun found in the Bloodborne combat generally to salvage a respectable placing in the top half of the list. We just got past that halfway point, by the way. Good job, everyone. I want to thank myself for getting this far. Oh, and a shout out to myself. Good job, me. Number 79, Regal Ancestor Spirit. This boss is all atmosphere. From the spectral prancing to the spacey Aboriginal soundtrack, every movement of this boss is laden with awe and intrigue. I found myself eyeing the deer, reluctant to hit the final blow. The mechanics are undeniably laughably easy, but the somber and beautiful atmosphere rang with the nostalgic howl of Sif deep in my mind. I'll just let you guys watch a little bit of the fight. It's just so peaceful, which is not something you can say about many FromSoft bosses. Number 78, Ishin Ashina. This is not a boss I think anybody expected to be here. Well, except for me, because I put it here. There were literally people who said they were unsubscribing from me because I put Emma as low as I did. And I don't think Ishin is much better. I find him to be very frustrating to fight, despite being kind of objectively a pretty good fight. I don't enjoy the narrative component of the evil ending. If I were to have combined Ishin with Emma in the boss rankings, which people really wanted me to do, it wouldn't have changed much. They'd still probably end up around here. They're like a 7 out of 10 boss for me, but they blocked me from playing all of the best bosses in the game. The mechanics of Ishin are kind of annoying, including the sword spam, the sidestep, and the endless fire. To top it all off, it reuses an arena we've already battled in like a million times, so I just can't argue for this one to be any higher in my book. It's definitely not a bad fight though, by any means. Number 77, Red Wolf of Radagon. I've lowered my opinion of the wolf a tiny bit from my initial ranking, but I still love it. It's a glass cannon build, meaning one of you will die, and it's gonna be fast. The contrast of blue magic on his singed fur is such a striking image, and watching the wolf leap into the air with a blade conjured in its mouth again reminded me strongly of Sif. While there is no real emotional connection to this fight, and it's essentially one phase, it still managed to leave me with a huge smile on my face after my first, second, and third encounter. I just think this fight is simply fun. Number 76, Chaos Witch Quelaag. Quelaag is every man's dream. An awesome boss! I'm gonna address this now because it was mentioned in the comments before. When judging a Dark Souls 1 boss, I do give it some leeway. They were working with less resources, less experience, and less competent players. Of course, over the years, bosses garnered bigger attack pools, more intense mechanics, new phases, and more. But back then, this was groundbreaking. It's not a full excuse for quality, as you could easily put every Dark Souls 1 boss in the top levels then, right? If it pioneered. But it does count for something. On pure combat quality merits, devoid of any context, I could see an argument for someone putting Quelaag below Najka. I disagree, but you could make the argument. You can't even really make the argument when you remember that Dark Souls 1 did it first, and did it at least as good, if not much better. You could pretty much trivialize this whole fight by hugging close to the misses, but even then, you still have to be aware of when she's gonna bust on you with the big AoE. It's also a pretty grand conclusion to one of the most oppressive and awesome Dark Souls areas. Number 75, Ilana, the Squalid Queen. Or Squalid? I don't know. Ilana is what Nishandra should have been. Cool. Actually, I don't think I'd want a final boss that summoned people. That'd be like dishonorable. Imagine if you're fighting Gwyn and he's just like, "You must now face my knights of valor, Ornstein and Smo." And then he just grabs some popcorn and sits and watches while you get ganked by ONS. The thing is though, because Elena is a mage, her propensity to summon Velstadt isn't all that unfair. He's kind of like a precursor to Renala, who temporarily summons huge dragons, but can be played around. I won't say this fight is perfect, but for a Dark Souls 2 gank fight, it gets just about as close to it as you could. It's pretty great. Number 74, Osiris, the Consumed King. I'm gonna start with the negatives here. The hitboxes on this boss can be a little weird because he's so skinny. The texture of his skin looks a bit dated, and he can be hard to even fight because if he spams his charger move around the arena, you might not even be able to get a lot of hits in. If those complaints did not exist though, I would easily consider this boss for 10 out of 10 quality because I love so much about this fight. The voice acting, the music, the dialogue mid-battle.
Dear little Asha, where have you gone? Are you hiding from me?
The moment that I'm not going to speak of for monetization purposes. The story and some of the elements of the combat really can all reach the peak of what Souls is all about. If this was in a game with lesser bosses, it would be in contention for one of the best. I know some people hate this boss, but again, I consider him criminally underrated. I tried to put him higher on my list, but my last bout with him, he was clipping through the walls a bit. It's such a shame because this one had such potential to be in the talks for the best of the best. Number 73, Dark Lurker. Okay, Alana wasn't the closest to perfect that a Dark Souls 2 gang fight could get. And you know what? This could even be higher. A lot higher. If I didn't have to go on a National Treasure level expedition looking for the lost documents in hell just to fight the boss every time. I tried a few times in my last playthrough and ended up running out of human effigies before beating the boss and eventually just gave up on fighting him, even though it's so sick. The visual design is one of the coolest in the game, and it's somewhat of a precursor to the Pontiff Sullivan fight, where the boss clones itself. It's intense, fast-paced, epic, dark, and it's pretty fun. It still doesn't have perfectly balanced gang fight mechanics like some of the best in the series do, but there really isn't anything to complain about here. Good job, Dark Souls 2. Number 72, the Blood-Starved Beast. Probably my favorite part of the fight with the Blood-Starved Beast happens before the fight. I love the slow build up to the battle with the haunting preceding area leaning into horror elements. There is a Blood-Starved Beast strung up among the rafters of a building you trespass in, and as you stare up, you wonder in horror. What is that? Then you see a figure down the hall, a shadowy beast, and it enters with a dissonant flash of horns. It lumbers at you slowly and intently until it bursts in a fury of rage and launches itself at you. Like, god dang it, this thing is intense. But there are much better beasts to fight in the game. I could take or leave the poison, not a massive fan, but I don't hate it. But the visual design alone created a monster of nightmares. Number 71, Sin, the Slumbering Dragon. If you guys think this is the best dragon of the series, you might be huffing whatever green mist Sin is gassing up the arena with, because there's no shot. He flies around so much, making RNG your biggest opponent in this fight, and when you do get hits in, it breaks your equipment. Those two things alone make him taking first impossible. Is he a great dragon fight though? Hell yeah. I love his entrance, and he's got one of the coolest looking fights in the series. The spear through his chest gives the boss character, and the arena creates a distinct atmosphere. Most of the attacks are fun to dodge, and the animations look fun and fluid. Not a bad fight by any means, it's actually quite awesome, but not near the level of the best. I also really love how it's placed right after Alana, basically rewarding you for making it to the end of the DLC with two great bosses back to back. Straight to business, the way I like it. Number 70, Sanctuary Guardian. Sin is definitely a cooler, more bombastic, and epic fight than Sanctuary Guardian, but there are a few things pulling it up. One is the impressiveness of creating a boss that pushed the limits of speed in the Dark Souls 1 world. The DLC is insanely faster than Dark Souls 1 base bosses, and the boss hits hard with a limited HP pool to balance out the aggression and speed. The other thing is that for all the highs of Sin, there are massive lows with unfortunate RNG and equipment breaking mechanics. This fight doesn't really ever annoy me. It's nuts to butts action from start to finish. Not really any annoying gimmicks, just speed and chaos. I love it. Chaos is a ladder after all, and I'm gonna climb that ladder to boss destruction. Number 69. 69, haha, funny number, haha, Commander Neil. Alright, now that I got that out of my system, this boss slaps. And I mean that in more ways than one. He slaps you with his summoned mobs, although he is graciously docile as you take your time to dismantle them. Unfortunately, these knights are insane on the damage front. One combo can mean instant death, and because there are two, you better be careful. This fight was my Vigor check of Elden Ring, and as soon as I reached here, I ditched it and leveled Vigor 5 times and returned. That's my only real complaint though. I don't mind him summoning mobs because he's literally a commander. He should command, if you catch my drift. Other than that though, like I said, this fight slaps. Battling a commander atop a snowy castle feels like the culmination of a cinematic story arc. Maybe 30 years ago he stole your cereal and you've waited long and patiently to get your revenge. He hits like a truck, but it's balanced by his slow and telegraphed moveset with ample time for punishment. The lightning-imbued peg leg and swirling frost attacks combined to a visual set piece I did not expect from a repeated boss. Honestly, another underrated boy here. Number 68, Ava, the King's Pet. Alright, we basically reached the 9 out of 10 territory. Initially, I had this boss even higher somehow. It's such a basic fight mechanically, but for some reason, it feels so fun. Maybe it's the fact that it's a snow tiger. Everything in this game is dogs. It's either dogs or derivative dogs, wolves, and now we finally get a badass big cat. This fight feels fluid and fair, albeit slightly on the easy side, and the setting is fantastic. I think there's a hint of subjectivity here with my absolute adoration, so I knocked the kitty down a peg or two, but know that I really only ever have fun in this battle. Number 67, Dragonkin Soldier. Holy guacamole, that's a spicy meatball. Look at this guy's design. You can't really get more crazy than that. I also adore the arena, as I had a shock when I realized that we weren't fighting the massive corpse sitting atop the throne. I had my eyes glued up there, and then looked down to realize I was fighting a different massive boss, and it did not disappoint. Rather than Darkbeast Parl's sole use of lightning as a visual set piece, I think the mechanics of this fight deliver as well. It's just a bit too easy for my taste, but again, one of the bosses I pretty much just have fun with the entire time. Number 66, The Lost Sinner. Dark Souls 2 does have a lot of battles with knights, but I think there are a good amount of variation in these battles, minus a few like Dragon Rider. The Lost Sinner does a great job of building a unique battle, first in the epic build-up and then in the unique mechanics. I love how lighting is used here, and I believe if you don't light up the arena beforehand, your lock-on might disconnect at times. You have the option of increasing the light or battling her in the dark. It reminds me a lot of Phase 1 of Gale with her stature and movement, and it's quick and exhilarating. I only don't love some of the hitbox issues, but other than that, it's almost perfect. Oh, and I also love the cutscene showing how she's shackled while she's fighting us. What a badass intro. Number 65. Bell Gargoyles. Alright, initially when I made this list, I assumed that the Bell Gargoyles were going to be in the 10 out of 10 range, but upon closer inspection, yeah, they're not quite that flawless. Thankfully, they approach you staggered, with the second being half health. This is fun not only as a way to balance having two opponents, but also to scare the player on a first playthrough. Undoubtedly, one gargoyle will give new players trouble, and as they finally get it to half HP, there's another. Sometimes the arena doesn't assist you in building space between the two, and if you just upgrade your weapon and come here a bit later, you can just one-shot it. But the setting is grand and memorable, as is the soundtrack. I love the opening cutscene, and it's one of the better gang fights of the series. But sometimes they both spam fire attacks and make it hard to punish them. All in all though, still a fantastic battle and the best of the gargoyle variants, though they don't really have that stiff competition to be honest. Alright, make sure you guys check out the previous videos in the series if you haven't, subscribe and hit the notification bell. There are only 3 videos left in this series, so you're not going to want to miss anything as we lead up to the top 10. Peace, have a great